David, cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy 4th. It was just 4th of July recently.
Yeah. Happy early July. Ides of March. No, it's not the Ides of March. I was just kidding. I'm excited to have you here. I know we've kind of been, ping-ponging it back and forth a little bit, but you're a busy man.
You're a busy man.
I'm not doing all the things that you're doing.
You're selling wine. You're having a podcast.
That's true. Yeah, we try to stay busy. I mean, you know what they say: idle hands are the devil's work.
You got a custom neon sign up here.
Thanks to Bianca.
I couldn't even find.
All this. Bianca did all this. She ordered the mics. She knows everything about everything. She did all the research for it. So I'm just the talker. That's what I'm here for. So, David, one of the things that I always kind of try to talk about, or at least kind of give an opportunity to be spoken of, is your story, kind of your past. I mean, I know you from currently working at Sons and Daughters, an incredible restaurant here in San Francisco, with Chef Harrison, somebody that I think very fondly of, that I really like, who didn't text me back when I asked him to be on the podcast. Harrison, if you're listening. But before that, I don't really know. I know about a little bit of a skiing background. I know that you kind of like to travel and ski, but aside from that, I guess I don't really know a ton about your...
You make me sound like a well-heeled, jet-setting, bougie socialite.
No.
Incredible. Thank you. I never thought of myself that way.
No, I think...
I grew up in a ski town.
Right.
Mostly. We moved there when I was 12.
Okay.
So I think those are pretty formative years. And then it influenced me. I wanted to go to the States, go to a big city, and I did. But then you always miss sort of home, and I certainly miss the mountains. So I try to make it out to the mountains as much as I can. Chelsea and I were just in Tahoe for the 4th, which was great.
Get some skiing in?
No skiing. So this is there's some snow on the top of a few of those peaks,
sure.
But there's not really skiing up there this in the summer. Some places you can definitely find summer skiing up on the glaciers, but not Tahoe. But it's beautiful in the summer. We get to go on the water. It's busy. I remember the first time. So I've lived here for like 6 years. The first time I went to Tahoe was in the winter. One of my first roommates invited me up, and I got to ski there, and that was incredible. And it was a few years later that I went for the first time in the summer. In the summer, it's a whole other world. Different kind of activities, obviously, to do. But I don't know. I like to be up in the mountains. But I skied because I grew up in a ski town. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Hey, man. No judgment.
No, not at all.
I skied when I was a kid. I mean, I was in...
you're from Texas.
No. See, this is what... When you're in Texas, everybody calls you California. When you're in California and you lived in Texas, everybody calls you a Texan. No, I grew up in Running Springs and Big Bear area. So I skied a lot when I was young, Snow Summit and Big Bear. And then I snowboarded for a while and injured myself snowboarding when I was a kid and gave it up. And then in Texas, there wasn't a lot of skiing or snowboarding to be had. I gave it up. Yeah. I decided
I was there next to Shaun White on the podium.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Probably not. I probably would have been in a wheelchair. With my luck. So yeah, I love skiing. But how did your kind of your and wine path cross? Where did wine kind of originate in your life? Was it before the restaurant industry? Was it because of the restaurant industry, or?
It was 6 years ago. And I think I knew very little about wine. And then the big sort of jumping off point was WSET 2. Mm-hmm. And so I took this, I was at the time, working as a bartender and you get into the sort of the world of spirits and then the wine sort of on the periphery. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to go with it.
I think it is. Yeah.
And I just wanted to learn more about it. And so WSET 2 was a course I took. And it's, I think, a good base to learn some fundamentals.
Yeah.
You build a pretty good foundation with it. And from there, it sort of took off of just fascination with wine. And so this was actually, I was in Canada at the time, and then decided to move to San Francisco to pursue wine, which is not to pursue wine, to pursue being a somm. And so, yeah, that was about 6 years ago. And San Francisco is a great place for it. I'm not saying you have to be in San Francisco to pursue wine. You can do this in any market, but there are definitely some benefits here because you have so many
Certainly
incredible chefs, restaurants, winemakers.
Proximity to the wine region.
And the wine country's right here.
Yeah.
Napa and Sonoma are an hour away. And sometimes I forget how close it is. Sometimes I feel like I don't take advantage of going up there because from San Francisco, if there's no traffic, you can be in Napa, the town proper, probably in an hour.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's pretty special. It's a pretty special place, and it's also just, pretty stunning here. Just the natural beauty, the landscapes are pretty special. And consequently very expensive.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to live in nice places, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the whole supply and demand thing. But that is my background, and then eventually made it to Sons and Daughters and took over the program, I think a year ago. Took over sort of stewardship of the program, which I think is more true because the restaurant's been there since 2010. And whenever you sort of take over for someone, you inherit a cellar. Not always, but when you do, you kind of have to see where it's been, where your current inventory is.
Yeah.
And what makes sense going forward, especially with a new chef. We had a new chef that joined around the same time I did, Harrison, who you mentioned, and took the tasting menu into that sort of new Nordic direction. And yeah, I don't really want to talk for him, but the menu changes quite a bit, and so I think the wine program should in lockstep. So
yeah, that's beautiful.
It's been fun. It's been really fun, and you sort of you take the challenges and opportunities and see what you can do.
Yeah,
it's been really fun, and you've been really helpful with finding the right wines that sort of fit our program. And obviously with a smaller restaurant with a tasting menu where most of the wine revenue is coming from the wine pairing, it requires a lot of creativity, and you're always pairing it with the food. It's always the food first. I think that's pretty obvious.
Well, I think that like one of the things that's really fascinating for me is to see kind of the range of tasting menus that exist nowadays, because I feel like when I moved to the city in 2019, many of the programs were, California cuisine. And, I worked at a couple, and, one was Chinese influenced. It was 8 tables. And then I worked at Quince for a while, and, and then I would work at Boulevard, and a lot of the, dishes and a lot of the influence between Boulevard and Quince was the same. One had 3 stars, one had none. But there was that kind of like seasonal California cuisine.
The stars, man. We're chasing stars here. August 5th.
I know.
Is the Michelin reveal.
Yeah.
And gosh, I can't wait till it's over.
How do you feel?
I feel fine, but like it's like the day-to-day is you create an experience for the guests and you want them to have a good time, pour them some fun wine.
Beautiful.
Give them some good food. But then the Michelin thing, it really has a huge impact, right? Like you're saying. I mean, it's going to either elevate your business or completely submarine it.
Yeah.
If you make that second star or that third star or not. So it's fascinating. But I don't know what was your experience? There's so much riding on having a Michelin star. It's sometimes a little silly.
Yeah, I think, I can't really speak to going from a 1 and aiming for a 2, because when I worked at 8 Tables, we didn't have one and we were aiming for a 1.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, we were aiming for a 2, and I think that the level of service was really there and the food was there. And, I mean, I heard a bunch of different reasons why we didn't get one. And, there was like, oh, this, dish is too similar to a dish that's in a tasting menu in China right now. Or there was like all these different reasons why we didn't get it, Yeah. But the team was good. The team was tight. I worked with a couple of people that had worked at Saison. The general manager had worked at Qua. He had worked at Meadowood. He had lots of stars. He was very experienced, very talented, and had an incredible attention for detail, which is something that I did a lot of in Galveston. I worked for this guy, Paco Vargas, and he had an incredible attention for detail. I mean, it was a Central American steakhouse, essentially, small mom and pop, but he had traveled to San Francisco since the early days in Vegas and had eaten in all these incredible restaurants and had this like obsessive attention for detail, almost to like a toxic level, which I think doesn't always go hand in hand. I think the newer generation of restaurateurs and somms and chefs are taking over, and I feel like it's a little less kind of toxic and a little more inspirational maybe, or kind of like, shoulder to shoulder, let's get through it together.
Yeah.
But, Paco he had really incredibly high expectations. And so when I'd worked at 8 Tables, I thought that I could handle it all really well, but learning a totally different cuisine was really challenging. So I'm sure you can relate to.
Yeah. I think it's fun to learn new food, new wine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to learn. And that's always the biggest challenge, is not everyone that you work with. And this is true in any industry, is going to be the same as you and going to want the same things as you. And that's completely fine. The challenge is, for me, the challenge is always to find what makes people tick, or what people are in it for, that you work with, and then you just try to, try to bring out the best in everyone.
Yeah.
It's really special when you have a small team and it's clicking, and it feels great right now at the restaurant, when people get along and people are doing their job well, and it's just working. Yeah. But that's rare, and that doesn't last, right? That's like Clay just left the Warriors, right? That always ends, right? So
it might, I have hope that it can last. I have hope that the future is changing, and I think that like people are understanding more and more that like there needs to be like work-life balance. There needs to be, like a level of camaraderie, a level of patience and understanding. When you get to that 3-star level is when you can kind of like turn into a little bit more of like a, like a meat grinder. Like everybody in the world wants to work here, so you can bring them in and kick them out.
That's your strength. Once you get, you're right, but that's the strength. Once you become a 3-star, then the resumes flood in, and then you have just a lot more options. Yeah. And it's impressive when those places keep their 3rd star for so long. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, is there a lot of change for those 3 stars, or they just sort of, they have a formula and then they keep they keep going? I really don't know. That's not my world. My world is serving wine in a restaurant 5 nights a week.
That's great.
In a little tiny restaurant with 7 tables. So
that's so cool.
Not 8 tables.
I know. See, I didn't realize there was one less.
We do have a PDR, which is the 8th table, but
okay.
Not every night.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say,
I was just saying, like, the team, because no matter what industry you're in, there are always people coming and going, mm-hmm. right? Like that's an obvious. Yeah. In the restaurant industry, that rate's a little higher. Usually, yeah. So I was just saying, the team's great right now, and it has been for a while, which is special. I'm enjoying it, and I've enjoyed, running the sort of the wine side of things. Good. It's been fun.
And what, 6 years? I mean, it feels like that doesn't feel like a lot of time, but in 6 years, you're going for your WSET 4, your WSET diploma. You've started taking the classes. You'll have to help me here, and this will be something that maybe you can elaborate on, but you're going for your advanced Somm. And so is this the first year, or is this a new thing where they're kind of offering like classes or lessons for it?
Class. I think they started this a couple years ago.
Okay, right.
A couple years ago, sorry.
Okay.
It took me to your state of Texas.
I know. You were in Dallas?
First time ever in Texas.
That's the worst city to go to.
I didn't really get to see it. I was there for however long, and I was mostly in a conference room.
Yeah.
The Ritz hosts it, the Ritz in Dallas, and you're basically in a conference room from 7:30 until about 6 or 7, and then you're just talking with these people, which is great. So the advanced course, the way it's set up now is intros. I don't know what intro is like anymore. I think it's like a 2-day course, right? And then you take the test, and it's there's no tasting component. For certified for level 2, there's no course. I don't think.
I don't think so.
No, you just take it, and then there's the service, the tasting, and the theory. And then the advanced in 2024, which I just took the course last month, it was a multi-day course, and then you're just meeting all these people from all over, and not even just the States. There are a bunch of Canadians.
That's awesome.
I snuck into the Canadian group photo. Somehow I still count. And so it's really cool to see a lot of these North American Somms, and you meet these people, and then you also just strengthen some of the network in your own city. Like you could tell, like people were, hanging, because like any kind of conference or anything you go to like that, people just tend to gravitate to people they already know.
Yeah.
So got to know some of the San Francisco Bay Area people a little better. And then the next year, 2025 for me, I'll take the theory, and then if you pass the theory, then you can do the blind and the service. And all that to say that was way too long to explain it. So it's a bunch of steps, and it's not everything, but I think the core does help for certain things. But at the same time, I'm taking WSET. WSET 2 was actually the first sort of deep dive into wine for me, and I loved it. And they also, like the core, have 4 levels. WSET 4 is also called Diploma, and I'm kind of halfway through it. There's 6 units. I just finished 2 of them, and one of the units is a research paper, which I'm doing right now. So it's a very different animal. It's there's no service portion to it, but there's a blind, and it's sort of the terminology is different.
The blind tasting grid is different.
The grid's different,
Yeah.
right? Which blind tasting is blind tasting, but you sort of need to get into it's like NBA player, like the Olympics are about to start in Paris, and Team USA, we for whatever reason, we're very good at the basketball, but this team always seems to like be a little shaky in the beginning because they're getting used to the international
Olympic rules. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. You kind of need to.
Boxing is similar. They have the white dot on the glove, and if you don't make full contact with the white dot, it doesn't count as a punch.
I don't know. I don't know boxing. That's a thing.
Olympic boxing is it's
but that's
very
not
different. It's more point based than it is damage based.
That's not the boxing people. Those like the big Mike Tyson bouts that you're going for, right?
No.
And then they're not necessarily the best Olympians, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
did Mike Tyson ever win gold? I have no clue.
I don't think he ever tried. Yeah. I think he was just in there dismantling people.
But I can tell you LeBron won gold, and he's won some championships.
Yeah. Michael Jordan. Yep.
Michael Jordan, because that was.
I can't remember if he won gold, but I think they won gold.
Well, Jordan was pre. The dream team was 92, right, in Barcelona. The whole thing with that was the pros could go in, and before that, I think it was only collegiate.
Yeah.
Collegiate athletes, and so I think Jordan did it so whenever he played. You got to do math. 80. You got to do like I think 84 Olympics.
Maybe, yeah.
I think that's his rookie year. So
Probably, yeah.
I think he got gold. But anyway, that's why I love this. By the way, this drink, because this was some sort of spirit from the Italian Alps.
Yep.
Maybe not even a 2-hour drive from Cortina, which is going to host the next Winter Olympics.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
In 26. The town my family's still in, Whistler hosted the Olympics in 2010.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that when we first met.
So I don't know, the whole Olympic. I always liked the Olympics.
Yeah,
I think that's probably a part of it. Winter Olympics are fun, though no one watches it compared to the Summer Olympics.
Surprising,
No one cares.
I used to love watching the Winter Olympics. My family watched the Winter Olympics more than we watched the Summer
Really?
Olympics. Yeah, I mean, we really liked the biathlon. Thought that was really cool, and then the slalom and all of that stuff. I mean, loved to watch the skiers and everything, and then it was cool to watch the ice skaters go around in circle and like kind of like get right behind each other so they could like fight off wind resistance. I mean, that we didn't watch NASCAR, so I wasn't used to seeing something like that. You know, I was like,
I've never seen NASCAR.
Dad, why are they right behind those other guys? And he's like, wind resistance or something. I mean, maybe he was lying to me, but that's what I think it is.
No, the hockey's the big one. I can't believe you missed.
Well,
hockey is the one, especially in Canada.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
They do very good with
You have a little bit more affinity for hockey than I do with Texas.
I never played. I was never a good skater, and I never played. And I didn't start early. I think you kind of have to start early. It's kind of like football. Right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, the locker room smell just as good as the football ones. But it's huge in Canada for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. Vancouver. I remember Vancouver Canucks. It was like 14 years ago. We Game 7 against Boston in Vancouver. We lost, and then a bunch of people lost their mind, started flipping over cars and breaking things, and it was a bit of an embarrassment. But yeah, Canadians take hockey seriously.
Yeah. I mean, we see that with like soccer, right? When certain teams lose, there's big riots. I mean, even when certain teams win, there's big riots.
Definitely not here, though. No one. We don't have people bought in
because we call it soccer. You know, I think that's probably the sign is that I just immediately call it soccer. I don't call it football. So
yeah,
man.
I'm excited. I'm excited for some. Am I excited for Summer Olympics? I don't know.
They give us something to do.
Yeah, you got something to watch.
Yeah.
In this summer.
Even if it's just on the background. I mean, half the time when it was on at the house, we didn't even watch half of the shit. It was just on TV, and you just look over, and I'd be like, you know, whatever women's basketball team is like kicking ass. You know, I had no buy-in before it, and I'd just like look at the TV. I'm like, damn, these girls are good. You know,
is Caitlin Clark going to be on the team?
I don't know. No idea.
She has to be. She's great, right?
Yeah, my knowledge of sports is incredibly minute. My knowledge of wine is much superior to my knowledge of sports, which is still not.
Let's talk wine.
Huge. Then. Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see that. It's cool to see like the regional differences. I think that's something that we can tie into wine and we can tie into food and everything too. Is it's like, I mean, it's just so different. That brings me back to one of the questions I wanted to ask is, you know, the cuisine for any of the listeners, which I think we only have like 5 or 6 at this point. No, I'm just kidding. We have like...
No, we've got more listeners.
We have like 54 downloads or something. For anyone listening, so the cuisine you mentioned is New Nordic. So this is kind of a 2-part question. Are there any other restaurants that you know of? I'm sure, I guess there are, but is there anywhere else in the U.S. that's kind of doing a focus on a cuisine like this that you know of off the top of your head?
No, we're the only one, and that's why you have to come to Sons
See,
and Daughters.
I love it. Perfect. One. Yeah.
You can book your experience on top.
That's right. There's only 7 tables, so, you know, book early.
In San Francisco, who is it? Like
nobody.
It's pretty rare, which is pretty cool. Yeah, in San Francisco, not so much.
Not much.
I mean, obviously, if you're looking like Denmark and
Right.
Sweden,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty special what we're doing. I'm sure there are other restaurants doing similar things, but
Yeah.
Can you think of any?
No, I can't.
In
I mean,
California, in New York, right?
I'm sure there's something.
Oscar, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's I think the one people note the most. But I think it's pretty neat, especially with what's special is sort of the new Nordic lens of preservation and fermentation, all these sort of things where you capture an ingredient and then change it, but then you have that ingredient that you can use at different times of the year, but using that on California produce, which is really special. Because there's just every day of the year there's something that you can get. It's pretty incredible, just the bounty of California. It's incredible. Like it's the Central Valley, obviously for production, but for wine, of course.
Yeah.
Is massive.
I think to me, it kind of ties into this theory that I have. It's more a theory than anything. It was kind of like the death of like everyday French wine in California, right? Like I follow all these guys on Instagram in New York, and they're all just like drinking Loire wine nonstop, and they're drinking like, cool Provence wines and wines from Languedoc and stuff all the time. On Jura is huge for them, and they're all super into that. But I feel like here there's less and less French restaurants all the time, and I feel like part of that has to do with kind of this rise of Japanese techniques that have happened in the kitchen. We have a lot of restaurants were based on California cuisine with French technique, but now there's like so much of the focus on kind of Japanese technique, which is almost, not that it's better, it's just different. But as you mentioned, we have such incredible produce and such incredible ingredients. It's like, we no longer need to, sous vide things. We do sometimes, but we no longer need to kind of like preserve things as much. Right. There's a little bit more kind of, I think, precision and efficiency versus kind of like tons of butter, tons of salt. Not that that's all French cuisine is, but I feel like we've kind of gone a little bit more towards that like clean and lean style of cuisine, because our food is so good and our produce is so good.
There's an incredible amount of diversity in technique and cuisine and everything in the Bay Area. It's really special. It's like it's an embarrassment of riches. But then again, it's still a small city. It's still it's not New York. It's not as big as London. Like it's small enough where the community is kind of pretty tight knit, which is really neat.
Yeah.
It sounds like an ad for San Francisco.
Move to San Francisco. Do it. You'll never regret it. Your bank account might a little bit, but you'll never regret it.
You'll never regret it. We have so much. Again, I know my little avenue that I'm going down.
Yeah.
But the wine side of things are pretty fun. And like you were saying, the restaurant's so small, we don't have a bar program, and that's because of the license. But then also, it's so small that wine tends to be what people gravitate towards. Anyway, and that's most of your focus, right?
Yeah. I think it kind of. The other part of the question that I wanted to ask, and then I got sidetracked talking about the death of French cuisine. Was when you're pairing with this new Nordic cuisine, do you find it fairly challenging? I know that kind of as a whole, you've kind of tried to put a little bit more focus on kind of alpine wine regions, and you've kind of tried to focus a little bit more on like higher elevation.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that is like a great kind of like guiding light for you as far as the pairing goes, or do you feel like that's has sometimes proved problematic with certain dishes, maybe?
It's a challenge. So with that sort of new Nordic cuisine, it's a lot of acidity, a lot of brightness, and you need acidity for a lot of these wines. And so cooler places, higher elevation places sort of offer that pretty consistently. So high acidity, a lot of minerality. That's sort of one big reason of going there. The other part probably is I sort of have a nostalgia for the mountains. And that's what I tend to gravitate towards. And the wines, just generally, they're fresher, they're leaner, they're brighter. I really like them, and it tells sort of a story with the food. And that's all it is with the wine pairing. You try to find what works, and when it clicks, that's great. But with every wine, there's a story to tell, and you got to find that story and that sort of angle, how it relates to the food. So that's what I love to do about it. And it's not exclusively mountain or alpine wines, but that tends to be the focus. And then also with just the spirit of our tasting menu, which focuses so much on place, of which farm we're working with, where the ingredient is from, and the technique. I've always, for this restaurant, wanted to focus on place. And so I took it to sort of reformatting the wine list, which is not something we have to talk about, but really focusing on place. That's sort of important to me, because I think that matches. I wanted the food and the wine to sort of match that presentation, where really what you should be thinking about is where, and then the why of why we're pairing it sort of presents itself. I don't know. Wine pairings are interesting. You've probably dined out in more places with wine pairings than I have, and there's always a different style. Sometimes there's no presentation at all. Sometimes they're talking about this is chosen because it's biodynamic and organic, or because of this and that. But I don't know. What interests me more is where the wine is from and the challenges that those people face, and then the history of how long has this grape been here, who were the first to plant it, were they the Gauls, did the Etruscans do it, did the Greeks, 3,000 years, like the history of it is what I really like. And yeah, I hope I have a fun pairing. I'm lucky because I get to sort of design that wine pairing to have 9 to 12 different wines with each tasting menu, which I think is a generous amount for people to sort of discover. That sense of discovery, right, of place and of wine is sort of what I want people to take away. Because I don't know, it's not a cheap experience, and it really should be that. It should be an experience where you sort of think about it and have been introduced to a lot of new flavors on the plate and in the glass. But there's so many places in San Francisco, New York, everywhere are doing that. It's really special. Again, you don't have to be in San Francisco to learn about wine.
Yes, you do.
Do this.
Yes, you do.
You do?
You have to be in San Francisco. No. I think that's a really great kind of thought that you have there, because that's something that I felt when I was at 8 Tables too. It was like people are coming here and people are like experiencing something, and they're like learning about Chinese cuisine, and we're serving them like sea cucumber, and we're serving them like braised pork belly, and it was like very unique for the tasting menus at the time. I mean, obviously there's like Benu and stuff was around that has their kind of like own versions of things as well, obviously. And then Single Thread rose to fame, I guess, kind of around the same time. But I thought that was really cool. And without knocking kind of like the Quince or Boulevard earlier, because I love both of those places for their own reasons, it was, like I said, I would just see those, and then I would see like another menu, and they would all kind of be like, avocados in season or tomatoes are in season. And everybody's doing like similar techniques and stuff, which is great to see, because it also lets you know that you can go have a dinner at Boulevard. If you and I went to have dinner at Boulevard, order a bottle of wine, get the 3-course prefix menu or 4-course prefix menu. And, if we order a moderately priced bottle of wine, could probably walk out and spend $300 or $400. Whereas if we went to Quince, I think now the tasting menu's $325, and then I think the wine pairing's $265 or something like that. $1,200 experience. I guess not including tip, a $1,400 experience.
It adds up.
It's a little different,
up, right?
Yeah.
So. No, it totally adds up. I'm sure people copy each other. People do, right? They do that everywhere. But if you know you're not, if you know you're being authentic, I think people know that.
Yeah.
People know that. I think it's obvious, especially now. Everyone's before they dine anywhere, they go on Yelp and Instagram.
Instagram is a big one now.
And now TikTok, and people experience these dinners well before they ever step into the restaurant. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? It's kind of like, at some point I wonder if restaurants are going to do what like a lot of artists are doing now, where they like make you lock your phones in bags and stuff like that.
Right.
So that way you can't take pictures, you can't like spoil the fun, and like, somebody's like taking a video of you removing this thing and smoke's going everywhere, and it's like a whole thing. And now your experience is like not the same because you've seen it online 50 times,
It's still very different in person.
Yeah.
It's still like, that's why people still go to see stand-up comedians in person and go see live shows.
Yeah.
Because it's still it's the same as it is on your iPhone 14.
Yeah.
with that.
You can't smell the spruce through the screen, Yeah.
No, but it's a big part of the restaurant experience.
Yeah.
Again, I serve wine in a restaurant, so that's sort of
awesome.
my office. But the office is now also sort of extended to people through social media, which is it's funny. I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah.
It's weird. You like, this wasn't a thing 20 years ago to be in the background of hundreds of strangers' videos that they posted. That some don't get seen, but some get seen a lot.
Yeah.
But this is also just a bigger this is a bigger topic of just how everything is being recorded all the time now.
Yeah. 1,000 little eyes everywhere. Yeah.
All the time. But again, if you're not copying and being creative and original and constantly changing, with like a tasting menu like we do, there's always something new. So I never fear people having the same wine pairing lineup 2 months later, even a month later. It's going to be almost entirely new. But that was also part of my strategy to build out the list in sort of the new, philosophy. So that was obviously part of the strategy is you bring in the wine pairing wines and then you have it on the list. Things that, not everything, but things that will work and will make sense.
Yeah.
And then also just building a wine list I love it, because there's a lot of thinking of what will reliably appreciate, because there are some wines that you can reliably say maybe they'll, the price you can go up 10% every year, right? If the big names, which we know, but then there's almost that that guessing of which producers you think will pop. But that's who does that? Who guesses that right? It's really tough to sort of forecast the trends and all that, and who becomes a big name and obviously there's certain types of wines that you can't bring on in age. Some wines you need to pour, pop the cork within a few years, right? So that is really fun. And I think if you're bringing wines that you think will, on average, appreciate on the list, so you're making money for the restaurant, so you can continue doing what you do. I think that's sort of the goal, but never sacrificing the wines that you're pouring in the moment, which is a challenge, but I think that's kind of fun.
It's all a balancing act.
Right.
And then I think too, it's like you were saying, it kind of opens up this Pandora's box of like, what do you pour? How much do you charge? Like, I mean, when I was at 8 Tables, I think the tasting menu was like $195 and the pairing was like $115 or something, and so we would pour like Belle Epoque or something at the very beginning to kind of like start things off. We'd pour something like super cool, like I don't know, like a older vintage Napa Cab or something as like the main, but kind of in the middle we would put on things like Hermit Ram, Skin Contact, Miller Turgau, or like we put on like kind of like fun, interesting, like hip things that also kind of helped like balance the cost out a little bit, whereas I think at $295 or whatever the pairing is at Quince, I mean, even when I worked at Quince, the pairing was always just like crazy. They're pouring like mid 80s Sassicaiyas and like
right, but you
Dun Howell Mountain 1989 like all the time for the protein.
But Quince, you could get those wines, and then also you're charging, like you said, $260, $265.
And then I think it was like $225. Yeah.
Yeah, and you should be pouring those wines because at that price point, you need to give the guest the value.
Yeah.
That's the job, and hopefully they get great service as well.
Yeah,
that's this thing. But
that's
you can't give great service with shit wine.
Yeah,
or the opposite. So it's important to have both. And then it's always I'm lucky that the team I work with, they have great. They know their wines and they like to pour them. Super lucky that I have that.
You don't have to. No, I'm just sipping on something.
What do we have there? A red wine?
It's I think it's a red wine. Yeah, it's likely a red wine. Yeah, I think you brought up something that's really interesting that kind of gives me a little bit more food for thought. Is like, I kind of every now and then like complain about how expensive these tasting menu experiences are. Not all of them, but many of them.
How much work? How much
No, I mean,
work.
I know.
People don't know.
No,
people don't know that the chefs are there in the morning, dicing, tweezing.
It's absurd,
and it's just a lot of work to just setting up the place, and it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll tell 2 stories. The first story is I always like to talk about like Quince, and like one of the things I appreciated the most about Quince is your second day of training. You have to get there at like, I think it's like 7 a.m. You get there, you're in the kitchen, and for like 6 fucking hours, I peeled salsify. That's all I did. All I did was peel salsify for 6 hours. And then after that, I deveined spinach for another 3 hours. And that was my whole day of training. And they're like, this is why if you fuck up, if you drop a plate, people get upset, is because now you see how much work goes into one component of these things. You know what I mean? So it's really, really incredible the amount of work that kind of goes into it. But I think what you were saying earlier that kind of sparked a little bit of a passion in me, I guess, is that, you're right. I mean, it's not just the food. I mean, ideally you're paying for excellent service, you're paying for excellent beverage, you're paying for excellent food, plating, ambiance, atmosphere. You're paying for, it's almost like a security. It's like a security blanket. It's like, you're paying a certain amount of money, so that everything is exceptional. Whereas like you just go into a random restaurant, and sometimes like service is great, but food sucks, or sometimes food's great, service sucks, or like location's great, but everything else sucks. And I always think back to Tillman Fertitta, who owns Landry's Corporation, and he was in the Forbes report forever ago as like the most successful restaurateur in history. He's like owns 600 restaurants or whatever. And I'm like, how do you do it? And like one of the things, I could be misquoting because I read it, 12 years ago or whatever, but one of the things that he said was you can have good location, good service, good food. And as long as you check 2 of those boxes, people will probably come back because most places only check 1 of those boxes. And so he said, I train really aggressively. I train my staff really, really well, which he did. And there was a bunch of like server audits and stuff before you could get on the floor. And then he has good locations. And he's like, and then the food, I can make sacrifices on the food. He's sourced everything from Cisco, everything, not everything, but, sometimes stuff would just come out of freezers and go into the deep fryer. But like people didn't care because the location was good and the service was good. But that's, when you're paying for what you're getting at a tasting menu, I mean, you're really paying for the Holy Trinity, essentially.
I think that's not the same as as the restaurants we've
definitely
been talking about.
No.
But maybe most people don't care. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine as well. Not everyone cares about Michelin.
Yeah.
And that's all right. I just know that the guests that we do have in, like, they're gonna get, the best experience that we can give them.
Yeah.
And yeah, wine's a part of it, but it's only a small part of it.
Yeah, I think one of the big eye-opening experiences for me before I worked at, I guess it was after I worked at Quince, Bianca and I went to Italy and we went to Matteria, which is in Lake Como. It was a 2-star then. I don't know what it is now, but we're sitting there and like one of the courses came up and it was like, I don't know, veal liver or something. Yeah. And the girl was like, this is our veal. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, this comes from my family's farm. You know what I mean? And then that connection made it so much more personal. And I know we can't like force it down like an average consumer. No, I mean it was really good. Like,
you ate little Susie.
She was so excited. She's like, this is my lamb. This is my lamb. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, or my veal. This is my veal.
You sent it back?
No, God, no. Oh, no, I would never. Let's say like, I want it. Can you just cook it really, really well done for me? No. Yeah, I know that there's not a way for us to kind of like show like a general consumer about how much effort and how much work goes into things, but I wish there was a way that we could do it. I feel like, I don't know if you guys are feeling it. It's the size of a restaurant that you are, but I feel like the restaurant industry is in kind of a really interesting place right now with people not going out as much, people not drinking as much. And I feel like there's maybe not an appreciation, or maybe it's just a lack of understanding about the amount of effort that goes into making wine. I mean, this isn't just, grocery store vodka. This is an organic product. It's biodynamic product. It's, somebody's farming it year in and year out. And, similarly with these products that are being used in the kitchen, it's like, I don't know that like not our generation, maybe the generation after us, maybe part of our generation is really kind of like aware of the amount of effort that goes into those things. So maybe that's why they don't see the value.
I think people become aware once they go to a restaurant like that and experience a dinner like that.
Ideally.
But also, like the bigger question is, are people getting out less? That could also just be macro things, right?
Yeah.
When you have less money to spend, that's one of the first things to go.
Yeah.
So it is, it's a tough industry to be in when there's tough times ahead. Who knows if there are or not? I don't know. I have no idea. But I think people understand that it's, the amount of work that goes into it. Mm-hmm. If you go to a restaurant like that and have the chefs in front of you and have, like 16 different little plates come your way, and stories are told, and you're being treated as incredibly as you deserve. So, like if you haven't done it and want to, like, just go to a good one.
Do it. Yeah.
Go to a good one. Experience it if you want. It's special, but it's also like it's expensive. It really is expensive. So you learn a lot if you're open. I think if you're open to it.
Yeah.
It's really special because it's food. It's what we all need every day to get by.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Every cell in our body is made up of whatever
we
eat
consume.
or drink.
Yeah.
So the whole you are what you eat thing, it matters.
It's quite true.
But yeah, if a potato can be a potato, or it can be something altogether different, right?
Yeah. It's true. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see kind of the future of our industry, and I'm excited to see the future of San Francisco. I think we just got done watching season 3 of The Bear. Did you watch it at all?
I haven't watched any of The Bear.
Any of it? No worries. Yeah.
No, I've watched maybe the first 12 minutes of the pilot.
Yeah.
I guess I should watch it.
You know, I think to me, it's valuable because I think that it shows kind of like the good and bad side of it, right? Versus like people think like, oh, you know.
I saw the menu.
Yeah.
The menu was great. It was
great.
2 hours long, and I definitely laughed more than others.
Yeah,
because it's comedic how
over the top it is. Yeah.
And where it's just ridiculous. But The Bear seems like a bigger commitment. A lot of episodes, huh?
A lot of episodes now.
But very different.
It's different.
Feel.
Yeah, very different feel. Yeah, I think that, you know...
those are the 2 that get cited the most, by the way.
What's that?
By guests.
Oh, really?
Well, especially last year back to whenever the menu came out, people just like the menu.
That's so funny.
Because for a lot of guests, they're celebrating an anniversary or a birthday.
Yeah.
So this is a special like Michelin tasting experience.
Huge experience for them, yeah.
And they saw the movie and they're like, wow,
That's
is
so
like
funny.
The Bear. And then they see us walking around in suits.
You guys aren't going to start killing each other, are you?
Yeah. And then all those bad jokes. Yeah. But that sort of died down since that movie came out like 2 years ago.
I think it was about 2 years ago, yeah.
But now people talk to me ask about The Bear. I've just not seen it.
That's funny. Yeah.
So I guess I should.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I think, you know, the reason I bring it up is because I think that it's getting a lot of people that aren't in the restaurant industry excited about fine dining and excited about things. And they're seeing like the amount of work and the amount of effort that kind of goes into these things a little bit more because, I mean, I think back and, you know, one of the main reasons why we wanted to do the podcast was to like help build community and help kind of like bring exposure and awareness to like the greater beverage industry. But obviously we have like a very heartfelt kind of focus on the hospitality industry because that's our background. Yeah, I mean, I think back to like my time in the service industry and you have movies like Waiting or Slam & Salmon, which are both like funny, ridiculous, slightly grotesque movies. And then
those are both like diner settings, right? Yeah,
they were both like TGI Friday.
TGI Friday.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other one was like high end, but it was like owned by this crazy professional boxer and it was just ridiculous. And I
didn't see the second. The first one is Justin Long. It's the Mac guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm a PC. I'm a Mac, that guy.
Yeah.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
And you know, it's fine. And like, there's plenty of stuff that makes you laugh and there's like some truth in some of it.
But that's definitely not the setting of the menu.
No, certainly not.
Bear, right?
Quite different. But then, you know, you have like Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. And then aside from that, like you had the celebrity side of chefs on the TV. You had the Emeril Lagasse, the Barefoot Contessa, the Rachel Rays. And, you know, you have them kind of like cooking dishes in their home or like in a shop thing. Yeah. And like that kind of inspires people to cook at home more. But I think that this is kind of the first time that we're getting something that feels like it's like for the hospitality industry. It's like when I watch it, I feel like understood a little bit. And it also like kind of triggers us. Like Bianca and I will sit here and be like, the episode will end and we'll just be like, oh, fuck. Like,
The Bear?
Yeah. We're like, can you watch another episode? And she's like, I think I can. And I'm like, okay, let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be, I mean, if you've worked in like pressure cooker situations and you've worked for people that are like challenging to work with, it can kind of like bring some of those feelings back up.
Yeah, those people are out there.
Yeah.
Those people are out there. Let them be. Let them be. They'll coronary.
I feel like there's a lot less though. And that's my thing with like you and Harrison being at Sons and Daughters, I think, and like the team that's over at Kiln. We have like younger generations that are stepping in that are kind of like leading the change, and not that it's not still aiming for excellence and not that it's not still like trying to provide the best experience possible. But I think that, I don't know. I mean, just from the outside looking in, it feels like there's a little bit more of a focus on like, if our staff is happy,
Yeah.
it's easier for them to make the guests happy, which
Yeah.
hasn't always been the case in a lot of places.
Tough. It depends what kind of restaurant.
Yeah.
It depends completely on the market, the food, the price point, the guest, like just everything. They're completely different. I don't know. Again, the world I'm in, like fine dining, Michelin tasting menu that takes you 2 to 3 hours. I don't know. It's very specific, and it's not meant for everyone. Like, not everyone wants to eat there. Not everyone wants to work there. But yeah, I don't remember like the bear and the menu. I don't remember those 10, 20 years ago. I guess I don't know. Maybe I didn't realize it. The Bourdain thing was, I think Bourdain was huge. And then like reality, these cooking celebrity shows.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get it. It's a giant market of people that want to watch TV, and we make really good TV.
Yeah.
Whoever makes TV, I don't. But there are a whole bunch of people in markets that don't have these restaurants, and so that's for some people the only way they get to experience them.
Yeah.
Is through a
TV screen.
Their screen.
Yeah.
So I get it. Also, yeah, wine is, I don't know, wine's super pretentious for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I would probably think that too if I didn't like history and geography and stories and traveling to see different places and sort of hear different languages and see different people. If that doesn't interest you, why would wine?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I get it. I don't know. Wine's interesting because it's also, the history of it is fascinating from the beginnings to how it spread, and then even in just the last handful of generations, how it spread to the southern hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And also, like, we're sitting here in San Francisco in the U.S. Americans didn't drink wine like they do now.
No.
Right?
Never.
We couldn't. When was Prohibition? 100 years ago.
100 years ago.
It was almost right in the middle.
Yeah.
Almost right in the middle of Prohibition, right? It starts in 1919.
Yeah.
Right?
1919, I think. Yeah.
So, I don't know. All that stuff is interesting, but it's also pretentious because, like, why would you spend so much money on a bottle of something that only gets you a little bit buzzed?
Yeah. I mean, I think, that's one way to think about it. And I think you touched on some really great kind of key points. And that's like understanding the story behind it, understanding like the people behind it, understanding where it comes from. I think that's kind of the thing to me that separates it from a lot of other beverages. Not all of them. There's a lot of really great whiskeys and a lot of really great, spirits out there.
It's a lot tougher to tell these stories though with spirits.
Yeah.
I think. I know there are a lot of mixologists that are really good at crafting the story, but it's a completely different.
Yeah.
It's a completely different beverage.
Yeah.
And then just also like fundamentally, wine is like that perfect thing where you can take a sip of, and it's not too hot. Spirits, that's too intense. You can't take a gulp of whiskey, right?
Yeah.
That's just crazy. But it's also not too light, and I don't know. It's a pretty interesting thing because it's also just happens pretty easily. You just have some grapes, then the juice spills out and starts to ferment. It requires distillation is like very clearly thought out,
manufactured,
right?
yeah.
Very clearly, people thought this, thought of this, and then like coffee also, like there are a lot of steps.
That's true,
right? Like a coffee bean doesn't just like doesn't turn into espresso all of a sudden, right? So wine is so, I don't know. It's like it's fundamentally so simple, but then also it gets to be so complex aromatically, and follows history very interestingly.
Yeah, I watched this funny Instagram. It's not funny, but I watched this Instagram reel the other day, and it was this girl, and she was talking about how she thinks like alcohol is like a conspiracy theory. And she was like, yeah, why is alcohol like...
What is that? I don't know.
Why is alcohol so tied into our culture? I think that it's like big companies that are like trying to like force us alcohol because, they don't want us to be happy, because if we're not happy, then like we'll start doing different things or whatever. And I just kind of like laugh because I'm like, well, alcohol is part of our culture because alcohol has been part of human culture for so many years, right? It's like, it's religious. Alcohol in general is, you would drink beer because the water wasn't safe to drink. Spirits were originally like medicine, or thought to be medicine at least, and it's like wine is tied to religion, and it's been kind of like made to pair with food for the longest time. And I thought that was so funny because she just like kind of was like, why does it make sense? But I mean, you were touching on how it kind of has like this really great like balance between not being too hot, not being too high alcohol, and how it kind of just like pairs well with food. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like the classic example of if it grows together, it goes together, or like the people that make the wine make the food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so they're making something that they can have with their meal.
You're only two more wine cliches.
No, I'll take them all. Yeah. People always laugh. I go, cross my T's, dot my I's, and mind my P's and Q's. And they go like, stop. Yeah.
P's and Q's?
Yeah, that's the other one. Mind your P's and Q's. Is like, make sure they're not backwards.
Did you grow up drinking sherry in the 1960s?
No, I mean,
I always thought that was a very...
It is. It's old. But yeah.
You're an old soul.
Yeah, my grandpa was born during the Great Depression. He raised me, so it was... I got a lot of those old sayings. So
really, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Some great stories too.
Yeah.
My parents immigrated from Eastern Europe a few years before I was born, so they don't have any of those like English sayings. They're all in a different language.
Is there any fun ones? Anything you want to share?
No. I what do you mean, fun sayings in another language?
Fun sayings are like a translation of a fun saying, or any. Like little quips of wisdom or something that they use that you think of on a day-to-day basis?
Nothing that comes to mind. So this is why this was interesting, because this is brandy made very differently. But in Slavic countries, in Eastern European countries, there's sort of the saying is sort of you don't eat your fruit, you drink it. And because a lot of those brandies are made from, like Slivovitz is the big one, made from plums, but then also from other kinds of fruit, right? But this is Eastern Europe. It gets really cold. It's fairly flat. It's a lot of vodka and fruit brandies and not wine, because in those sort of plains of Eastern Europe and all the way you go to Russia, it's just not good for wine. There is good wine in other parts, but it's usually some of the foothills of the mountains, and then sort of along the coasts of, whether it's the Black Sea or something else. But Yeah, this is sort of, I don't know, my back, like Eastern European, and that's a big thing of brandy. This is very different though. This is from, I don't know, you know this better than I do.
Yeah.
This is from the Italian Alps.
It's from the Italian Alps. It's essentially, it's kind of like a Geneva gin, if you will. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's from this company, Distillery d'Alpe, that focuses on just basically 3 items, or at least that's all we get. This and a Amaro and a bitter liqueur.
This gets you through those cold,
Certainly would.
cold winter nights.
Yeah. It's also not too punchy, which I really like. I can't remember. I think it's like 35% ABV versus like vodka that's 40. Or when I was in Macedonia, we drank a lot of rakia.
Why'd you go to Macedonia?
I had my friend was getting married, and he invited me to his wedding,
No way.
so I went. But we drank a lot of rakia, and I think I can't remember. They told me it was in like the 48% or something like that, even though it was based off of grapes, mostly grapes.
Did you go elsewhere in former Yugoslavia?
No,
Down there?
I had a layover in. Where did I have a layover in? I can't. Oh, I had a layover in Serbia. It's like a 16-hour layover. I just stayed in the airport.
So they love Alexander the Great, don't they?
Yeah. There were statues in every town square in Macedonia.
Of Alexander the Great.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
I mean, he went pretty far.
It's pretty successful. Yeah.
He went pretty far.
Yeah.
But now Greek, right? Macedonian. But do the Greeks kind of claim him too?
The Greeks claim him, but in the Greek, we were talking about this earlier, Greek wine and Greek wine regions, When you're looking at Greek wine regions, there's a whole region called Greek Macedonia.
Yeah.
And it's right up against the border. And so I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, what really is a border? It's just like
they move around all the time.
All the time. It's just a line on a map.
Yeah.
This is my half, that's your half. He's from here. Well, in 100 years, he'll be from here.
Right.
Yeah.
It's this side of the border for now.
Yeah, exactly.
Rivers and mountains make pretty good borders.
That's true. Yeah.
Usually.
Geographic borders are often helpful.
But they move around. They move around all the time.
Yeah.
I don't. So that's not to like plug the wine list at Sons and Daughters.
No, please.
No. And this isn't really a plug, but this is since the focus, like I was talking earlier, was about I wanted the place to be.
I was going to ask you about this. I like this.
This is why I sort of made the list, following nature, and so it was sort of I have things by the mountain ranges, and so sometimes it's transnational, oftentimes it is, and then by the incredible rivers.
Wow.
And then sort of go to the coastline. And so I'm sure I definitely know it annoys some people, but it's also not that style isn't for every kind of restaurant. And it has to be, I think, a restaurant where you get that attention. And if someone's looking for a bottle of wine, you will help them find it.
Yeah.
But again, it was another thing where I wanted to echo sort of place.
Sense of place,
being the focus. But like you're saying, sometimes like rivers and the mountains, it's like Alsace being it's the Rhine, and it starts in Switzerland, right? And then it's really interesting because the Rhine and the Rhone like start very close to each other, but the watershed goes obviously into the North Sea, being the Rhine, and then the Rhone goes into the Mediterranean, even though they start with these sort of glaciers. But the Rhine, it's Alsace on the French side of the Rhine, and then it goes, all of a sudden both sides are German, and some of the best wines are from there. But it wasn't always like right now the border is the Rhine, but the Vosges Mountains in the past, like the borders shift. But you see obviously aromatic white varietals all up and down the Rhine. So I always thought, I think of it that way, but also I totally get why it's not taught that way.
Sure.
Through WSET or the court or a lot of wine books, you sort of like, what books do we have here? Folly, World Atlas of Wine. It's all based off country and then sub-regions within that country, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of the transnational wine regions. There are a lot of them, but they're rarely talked about that way. But I don't know. It's tough. Also, not everyone thinks geographically and spatially, right?
No, I think that's awesome. I think that list sounds super cool. It's first of all,
It's not that it's super cool. It works for us.
I think I'm not saying it's cool to the world. I'm saying I think it's cool.
It's helped me sort of think about wine, and so it is. I think a different way to present a wine list, which is another way to sort of be different and create something unique.
I think that's great. I think that's cool. And you touched on some great points. I mean, I don't often even think about the fact that the Rhine and Alsace are kind of like that close together. I mean, when you think about them as you just cut it off at the border. You just go like, I want something German or I want something French, right? And like, even when you think French, I mean, I don't know, given the cuisine, you maybe think a little bit more about Alsace than I do. But even when I'm like blind tasting something, I'm very rarely like, oh, I need to consider Alsace as part of the region. It's just not something that I feel like I focus on quite enough. Or even, in Oregon and Washington, where like a lot of those appellations kind of like overlap over the border, But I think the list sounds really fascinating. And I think you're right. I mean, it requires somebody to be there to help you. But I think that's part of it. Yeah. And again, that's what you pay for. You pay for somebody to be there and you pay for somebody to help guide you through it. You're paying for a unique experience, which I think is really important. I mean, there's nothing like, I had Marissa Payne on and her and I were talking about it. And it's like, sometimes you go to a restaurant and you like go with your friends or family and like, maybe they're going to ask you what you want to order and you like do research on the wine list ahead of time because you're like, it's like a 60-page wine list. I got to get started now because the last thing I want to do is sit there and you and I are supposed to be having dinner and I'm just like looking at a book for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You know what I mean? So
I'm sure that drives people crazy when I do that because I just want to look at the wine list whenever I go out.
Oh yeah.
It's fun.
Even if I already ordered something, I still just want to keep looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. When the people you're with don't care.
Yeah.
It's probably annoying to them. But yeah, I don't even know what were we talking about. Transnational wine list. Mm-hmm. It's also like the wines. It makes sense where things are and if they're looking for something, because usually people will say varietal, but they usually will say varietal from a place. Mm-hmm. It's usually Napa Cab or like Red Bordeaux, like, and you'll find it close by. But also and this isn't something I originally considered when I first sort of wanted to change the format and sort of bring in wines to sort of make it feel intentional from the beginning, which again, like if you inherit a wine program, you got to find a way to make it. I mean, you can take it over and just keep it the same, or you can, and if you want to change it, you have to sort of think of how it's going to fit
step at a time,
it, right? Yeah. Because unless you have the ability to just sell off all the wine or get it off the list and just, I don't know, keep it in storage and have it be a dead asset, essentially, you kind of have to be creative. And that was one of the ways, that was one of the things I thought about. But what I didn't think about initially, and then it sort of presented itself by doing this, is you sort of show American wines in American regions differently. Because the old sort of, really the European model, but then ever actually outside of the US, almost everywhere, people think of the regions and varietals to them. And, they want a red Burgundy or they want a white wine from Marlborough, what that is. Yeah. But generally, and this is starting to show more and more, but generally, American wine regions are so, we have, just by virtue of the AVA system, you can have almost any kind of wine from any place. Yep. And by having it kind of by region, so the American wines are sort of generally North Coast ranges, South Coast ranges, the Mayacamas and the Vacas, and so include like Knights Valley and Alexander Valley as part of the Mayacamas, which, to be honest, we should sort of stretch that Napa County line, because I think some of those wines have more in common with they're more kindred spirits with the Napa
Knights Valley,
neighbors,
especially.
right?
Yeah.
The Napa neighbor. But then for some of those wineries, like their challenge is they're in Sonoma and had Sonoma on the label, and that's tough to get the same price as they do a few miles down the road because they have Napa, and Napa just fetches that higher price. So, but I found by doing it sort of generally by ranges, which is especially for California wine, and even for Northwest wine, it's sort of the mountains that sort of that determine it more than the rivers. And maybe that's because California's dry. We don't really have Napa rivers, barely a river.
Not often, yeah.
Right. You find that there is, and more now than in the past, we're starting to have varietals that stick to certain regions. Yeah. And so it's another way to sort of, I don't know, educate guests about that. Because usually they just look for Napa Cab, and then they got their Cab list. They got their Pinot list. And then you've got Pinot from Anderson Valley, from Monterey, from Willamette all together. And so this has, the way I have the list set up is they're, they may be on different pages, but I think it has more in common of the sense of place and sort of bringing that sense of, I hate the terroir word, because you never know how hard you stick that French pronunciation with terroir, but that idea of not even terroir, but just that sense of place, I think that should be amplified more for American wine, rather than just varietal and style. Yeah. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that does American wine. Maybe what's great about American wine is that we're not focused about the place and the sense of terroir, and we're more focused about just like they like Cab, give them a Cab. I really don't know, because I don't know. We have a lot to be impressed by with the American wine industry and how short of a time we've built out something pretty incredible, where it took a lot longer. We did in a few generations. Yeah, it took dozens for most of the rest of the world. Many dozens, actually. Yeah.
Thanks, Chilichev. Chilichev came over here and just handed us the keys.
Everyone loves to talk about Chilichev. That was a big deal. But again, that was only a few generations ago. Right. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable. North American wine history. I'll include North because Canada's a part of it, and that's also growing. Yeah.
Are there, speaking just quickly on Canadian wine industry, I mean, what are some of the things that you're seeing that are taking off there? Is it mostly kind of recognizable varieties, Cabernet?
I think the only thing I've had. I'm seeing absolutely nothing in San Francisco. None of this stuff makes it here. I know what you're saying.
It's like Switzerland, right?
I know what you're saying.
We're never going to really see that much of it. Yeah.
Though I've got some Swiss wine on the way. It's the first to be brought over. Awesome. So you gotta come taste it. Yeah. It was this winery when I was there back in January. I got connected to the winemaker and got to taste. And this is in Valais, the Baby Rhone. It's the Baby Rhone Valley, Valais in Switzerland. Some of the best wine, probably the best wine from Switzerland coming there. This is the Rhone Valley before it sort of cuts up, goes into Lake Geneva, and then goes into France, does a couple turns, and then goes south. And so here, super sunny valley, and they've got a whole bunch of different varietals. But these wines are good, and you just don't find them here because most of the stuff's just there, or they export it. It's not hard to export anything from Switzerland. It's you throw far enough, you'll export it. Yeah, it's a tiny country if you get it over the mountains. But I'm excited to bring a few wines and just for people to taste some Swiss wine. Yeah, because you usually don't unless you go travel there. But Canada, it's you're right. It's like Switzerland. You don't see too much down here. A lot of varietals, but like what brought you Bordeaux varietals, the Rhones. They have a little bit of everything. I think they're still figuring out. Also, I grew up in British Columbia, but I've never made it to Okanagan Valley.
Not yet.
before moving. Not yet, I know. But I learned wine after I left BC.
Yeah.
So I am excited to go back and learn more about it.
Yeah.
But it's fairly young and nascent. It's a nascent industry. It's like Willamette Valley. That's all. That's all young. 80s is 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
I know they're making wine there in the 80s, 70s, 60s, but that's not that long ago.
Not really. Not in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. There are already a couple Star Trek movies out, I'm sure, by the time they started getting going.
Yeah.
That's not that long ago.
Yeah, and then, I mean, even on the inverse, I think you're doing a really great job of, like, kind of being an ambassador or kind of, like, being an ally for regions that are lesser known, at least Switzerland for now, and maybe, you know, some of the Canadian wines will make it onto the list at some point. But in the meantime, you know, one of my friends, Tim, is running Roaming Goat down in the marina. Yeah. And it's focused on Georgian and Armenian wines. And, I mean, it's taken him 2 years of, like, tracking down stuff, reading about producers and calling them and emailing them and trying to find out who distributes them in the United States and who distributes them in California and how to set up an account with that person and how to taste wines with that person.
A great way to learn about just this industry is you find the wines that you want to find, and then you have to find them. Yeah, daisy chain them together. Yeah. Then you have to figure out who's importing, who's distributing, and all that. And then of course all the if you're dealing with multiple states, then you have to deal with every state's different you know, laws depending what kind of state it is and all that. Which is something I didn't realize growing up, because I grew up in BC, which is in Canada, every province except Alberta is super controlled by the state. And then I went to college in Pennsylvania, which is old school, also really controlled by the state, where I remember we would have to, I went to school maybe a 30-minute drive or something like that from the Jersey border. So we would go to Jersey to get a certain alcohol that you couldn't get in Pennsylvania, and then drive it back. I don't know if that, everything was done legally, of course. Sure. But I just thought it was always controlled by the state, and I didn't realize there were some states more open and loose. And then you go to New York, and then you go to a Duane Reade or whatever corner store, and you can get beer and spirits there. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even here, you know, in Texas, it's a lot of work. In Texas, you can only get liquor at a liquor store, and you can't buy liquor on Sundays, and you can't buy liquor after 9 p.m. In Texas, all Texas. Or holidays, all Texas. And then within that, there are counties, and they're dry counties, and they don't sell alcohol in that county at all, right? But then you go right over the border to Louisiana, and it's like literally, the second you get over the border, there's like casinos, because there's no gambling in Texas either. So there's casinos, there's, you know, all kinds of stuff. You can walk around New Orleans with, you know, cocktails in your hand, and nobody gives a fuck, right? And it's just like, it's so crazy to see it kind of like where each state kind of drew the line in the sand and said, like, this is what we're doing here. Right. Well, that's all because of the repeal of prohibition, and then they put it to the states, and then the states decided what they wanted to do. Which I understand. But going back to your friend, Armenian, Georgian, I think that's really cool, because obviously that's the beginning of intentional wine. Right? Wine that was, you know, grapevines that were cultivated and intentionally harvested and made wine, and then the things that you put into the ground and to ferment and store wine. And, there's a lot of cool stories there. And then, of course, the Armenians and the Georgians both like to claim that they invented wine. Of course. Yeah. We both know the real answer, right? Hey, man. Well, I'm not gonna. I'm not putting my hat in the ring here. No, but it's cool. But then also, the Georgian thing is also tough, because it used to be like the Soviet, and that obviously affected the wine industry, just like very colorful past. Yeah, and also what was planted, and then what got exported. No, Georgia's interesting. Yeah, those wines. I also know that not every wine list can have all the wines, so you sort of pick your spots.
Yeah.
And for us, it's fairly classic, so we're fairly classic. And then things I try to build out. Some interesting Alpine wines from the Italian, Swiss, French side, and then I love Rhone wines, and also I think they work well with the food. So I've built out Rhone, especially, and then American. I think. If you're in San Francisco, unless you're doing, an all Italian wine list, especially for us, we're going to get people that are visiting from far away and want to try American wines. If they want to do that, you should have something for them. It's tough because it's easy. I'm sure it's easy. It is easy to just fill out a list with things that you would want to drink, but you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. That's not right to ownership, to the guests, to the just the health of the restaurant.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people want to.
There are places like that. You go and you look at the list, and even as somebody like that's been in the wine industry as long as I have, I look at it and I go like, I recognize 15% of this list, 10% of this list. And it's not even like the super natural places. Like I'm still really behind the 8 ball on like the natural wine thing. I'm still learning a lot and still needing to catch up a lot on things. But there's places I go that are not natural wine bars that have lists that I'm not familiar with, know. And that's a good thing.
It changes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, guest demands, consumer demands. Because it should be consumer demands if you're throwing retail, because retail's the big one. Most people get their wine from retail, right? Not even from restaurants. And so those things, demand for that changes.
Yeah.
And so people are going to make wine that people want to drink.
Yep.
But I don't know. So you have to, the thing is the places that will last will have the wines that people want to drink for the longest.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, if you're having only natural wines, I think that's great. If you're selling them,
yeah,
I think that's great.
Yeah. No, I mean I'm with you. I think it's cool. I think it's great. I'm excited to see the good things that it brings. There's going to be obviously some kind of like not great things that come along with it, but that's okay too. I think just, if anything, as long as it's getting people excited about the wine industry, that's all I really care about. As long as people are invigorated and excited about wine or interested in wine or curious about wine, however they get into it, I don't really care. I mean, I started off, I don't know about you, but I started off drinking barefoot. That was like my first bottles.
I thought this is barefoot.
Yeah, well,
glass, right?
yeah. I mean, it's pretty close. I mean, it's close. It's the red Moscato.
Yeah, this is definitely not barefoot.
Yeah.
That's very special.
Yeah.
Thank you for.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of barefoot out there.
No, I think it's a good gateway wine. And I think natural wine. If people are just getting into natural wine because it says it's natural wine, it's the hip thing to do. If that's the gateway wine, great. If people are getting into wine because they're going to an Italian restaurant and they know like, oh, I'm supposed to order Italian wine at an Italian restaurant. If that's their gateway wine, great. I'm all about it. Just have a gateway wine. Get into wine, taste it, learn about it, understand that there's intention behind most of it.
Chelsea showed me a video about barefoot wine. Do you know there's this guy on Instagram that he goes around and does like a wine pairing for people's dogs? Did you see this video?
No.
Some woman, woman with the dog that she you would think loves was asked what you would what kind of wine their dog is, and she said barefoot. That's all. The Somm was very disappointed. He thought he didn't love her very much, but that was the wine she knew. That's nice, comforting, cozy wine that she that she likes to drink with her dog. Yeah. Hopefully the dog doesn't have too much, but
well, I mean, never know. Wouldn't hurt. I mean, it would hurt, but
yeah, no. Barefoot they make a lot of wine.
Yeah,
it's very consistent.
I don't even know that they're doing. I'm pretty sure that when I sold it at Glazer's, that there wasn't even a vintage on the bottles?
I think the last time I had barefoot was probably college, and I think we went to like a sushi dinner.
Yeah.
And there's sake bombs, and then you would just bring your like barefoot.
That's funny.
But also like in college, you know, you slap the wine bag.
The wine bag.
And, all sorts of things. Yeah, good times. I definitely did not learn like who's that legendary wine writer, Hugh Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Hugh Johnson.
Yeah.
English guy.
Yeah,
right?
that's
and when he went to.
Isn't it? I think he's on here. Yeah, he's one of the co-authors of World
Wherever he
Atlas
went
of
to
Wine.
university, he had his friends, and they would drink wine and talk about it. At least those are his stories. That didn't happen for me in college, and maybe that happens for some people, but that was not my first experience with wine. But again, it's not everyone. A lot of people can just drink barefoot their whole life, and it's great.
Yeah,
it's very good value.
I mean, my dad drank Coors Light most days. You know, he would like a craft beer here and there, but like Coors Light was his old reliable, you know, and it was like that's something that he was okay with drinking, and that's great too. I mean, I probably have an issue more than anything. I go and I get like, you know, I go to a place that's build your own 6-pack for beer, and I get 6 beers that I've never had before.
I love those
I'm
places.
Ready to try new stuff and ready to try different things. Half the time I'm like, I don't really like this, or well, I like this, or you know, whatever. But maybe it'd be easier if I was just had kind of an old reliable, but I don't.
For beer?
For anything. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not in wine. Obviously, my job wouldn't really bode well for my job if I said like, you know, the only thing that I like to drink is this, but you should buy all of these other things, right?
I don't have a regular.
Yeah.
I don't have a regular. Also don't want to drink wine after work. I really don't drink that much wine.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people are listening to this and saying like, what a fuck.
No, come on. No, I mean, I think it's a great lateral into like chefs that finish their shift and like don't want to go home and cook. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're doing it all day, every day, I mean, you know, there's times we get done after like a long day of showing wine all day, and I'll order a beer. I sit down at a bar and order a beer. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm just tired. My palate's blown. I've tasted the wine so many times at this point. You need some
bubbles.
Yeah. Or champagne or whatever would be great.
You need some bubbles.
Any carbonation.
Non-grape bubbles.
Yeah.
Is what you need.
Yeah. Something to brighten the spirits. Well, we're getting to the point in the show where I'll ask you a couple more questions that are kind of my consistent roster of questions. One of the big ones I always like to ask, David, what does hospitality mean to you?
I should have prepped for this.
No, it's fine. You don't have to prep for it.
Just prep for this.
So you work in the service industry. You enjoy taking care of people. You probably enjoy exceeding expectations, right? Making people's day and making people happy. I mean, what do you think? Like, is there something in particular that brings you joy more in the day than other things? Or, I mean,
what does hospitality mean to me?
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of, I love it. I love the interaction with people, the human interaction. And it was also kind of natural for me because I kind of grew up with it. So yeah, my parents had like a pizza shop when I was a kid, and then they had a coffee shop, and then I worked in both as like a little kid, and so I was always around it. And then I went to school and ended up studying computer science and business, and it was very sort of a very different thing because it's a lot of alone time on a screen, and I love what I learned there, but I sort of went back to hospitality eventually. It just always felt more natural. Always felt like it wasn't work. So hospitality to me is it's work that doesn't feel like work. And it's just connecting with people as you would any time, just being a good host. Make sure people are happy. 'Cause you can feel it when people are uncomfortable, right?
Yep.
And yeah, if you're in it because that you can make good tips as a server, as a bartender, and then you're chasing that restaurant where you take home so much money, and I don't know, maybe you also feel that same feeling of hospitality, but I don't know. It to me that ends up like feeling like work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's hospitality, the job. You also have to remind yourself it's your job, so you do need to make sure you're at the right place.
Yeah.
Set yourself goals, and then sort of make sure the place is going to give you something in return.
Yeah. Makes you happy.
And it makes you happy, but also is good for your sort of path, your career. And also you should be there to sort of better the place. But the day-to-day is always like hospitality is at the core of it, isn't it? And if it feels forced, I don't know if that's great.
No, yeah.
Because I'm sure you've worked with people where it just seems natural, and I've worked with people it's like, wow, this is incredible. They just have it. It's natural, or maybe they developed it. But then there are some people where they're a completely different person, and you can kind of feel it.
Yeah.
See through it. So it's that connection, and it really shouldn't feel like work.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me. I mean, I worked in it, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then I guess the only other question to check off the box, well, there's two more, but the next one is, have you had a chance to taste the wine yet?
I have not.
Would you like to taste the wine?
Well, I would like to taste the wine, but it's a very good wine. It has some age to it.
Yeah.
This wine has some nice age to it.
There's a kiss of age.
A kiss of age?
Yeah.
Now, are we talking Y2K pre-post? It's tough.
Yeah.
This is tough.
This segment is just about tasting the wine and just enjoying the wine. You don't have to blind it. Just taste it.
When I first took WSET 2, and you learn about how to taste wine. You look at it, you smell it, you taste it, you learn about the structure, all that, yada, yada, yada. But it's a lot of twirling, especially that beautiful color. A lot of twirling. And I think I still do this, but I especially did this early on. I would just like swirl everything.
Yep.
Like I'd have a cookie with a glass of milk, and I would swirl
I do it with water all the time.
You do it with water all the time? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing.
Just
and I just want people to know we don't do it on purpose.
Yeah. It's because I'm usually tasting more wine than I am water.
Yeah, this is like a PSA, like a public sorry announcement for swirling everything.
Yeah.
It's just a habit.
Yeah.
But
whatever.
People need to know this. People need to hear this.
That's why I like these little glasses for our spirits, because it's a lot harder to swirl them. I mean, if it's low, you can get a little spin to it, but it's not quite as effective.
That's beautiful.
That's it. You like it?
That's beautiful.
I
love it.
That's it.
I love it. This has, okay.
You don't have to blind it.
I'm not blinding it.
Okay.
But I do want to, I shouldn't say anything because I'm going to get it super wrong.
No, I mean, whatever. I mean, one of Bianca's blinds was, I poured her, I don't even know if we put this in the original episode because we did a couple takes, but one of the wines that she got, she was like, oh, she smelled it. She goes, this smells like Syrah. And I was like, okay. And then she tasted it and she's like, this is Italian. And I was like, okay. And she goes, I think it's Italian Syrah. And sure as shit, it was Cortona. The wines are not always blindable. Sometimes I just pick a wine. I pick a wine that I feel like can have some kind of relation to the person that I'm sharing it with, right? Like if you and I were going to go to dinner and we were going to bring a bottle of wine, it's either champagne or something that I put thought into. You
Yeah.
know, champagne's an easy catch-all, but so anyway.
Just the savory spirit of this.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, and it's so like desiccated and dried,
Yep.
and it still has the structure. And see, I don't know what this is, but given the aromatics make you think a certain year, but then the structure makes you wonder, given that age, with this structure, which way are we going?
Yeah.
Do we? Yeah.
It's a little bit of a trickster for that sense, but I can reveal if you're ready to reveal.
It's a beautiful wine. Yeah, it's a beautiful wine. I'm going. This came out the same year. Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent came out.
Okay.
From that year.
I think it might be a little bit younger, but that's why it's tricky.
Cherche.
So
Very cool.
You and I have had this winery before, the Christina Scarpellini bottling, but this is the Flamante Inferno, which is, is one of the hottest
incredible.
crus in all of the Valtellina. But I picked this wine. I mean, it's a higher elevation, which I think is important for your program. You're kind of focusing a little bit more on these wines, and I was like looking through my inventory on like, what should I show David? What should I show David? And I have a bunch of wines that you've already had or you've already ordered. Sandra Fe, the Cherche Christina Scarpellini bottling. But I know that we've never tasted the Inferno together, so I was excited to share this wine with you. And
these are not fruity wines. They're so savory, so early. 5 years.
yeah.
Yeah, incredible Nebbiolo. This is, I mean, the Adda River, people need to know. Because it's got some of the best Nebbiolo out there, some of the best value, I think.
Certainly for Nebbiolo, yeah.
Because Barolo Barbasco is tough.
Fucking expensive. Yeah.
It's really tough.
Yeah. It's something I talk about a lot when I'm in the field and I'm selling something like selling Valtellina can be challenging because
no one knows it. No one knows it, and then let alone the subzones of Valtellina.
and then you tie into that the Achilles heel of all of our sales is I already have our Pepe, right? Like I already have our Pepe. They have the top producers. They don't want anything else. They don't want to represent anything else. So Sandra Fe is one that I always like to sell because they make a Sforzato, and that's the only cru that our Pepe doesn't operate within.
And these are wines a little more concentrated, a little sweet, no?
Yeah. They usually do a little bit of like a drying method, like an Amarone.
Right.
It's often like 50% dried fruit, but with Sandra Fe Sforzato, it's 20% dried fruit, roughly 20%. But that's their most expensive wine that they make that we get, and it retails at like $66 a bottle.
Listen, Get Rich or Die Trying came out in 2003, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So that's a great endorsement.
Good bang for your buck. Yeah,
Great endorsement.
I think that the wine I like the wine a lot, and I think her style of winemaking is really nice too because it's very finessed. I mean, all of her wines across all the wines that she makes are very finessed, and Valtellina in general has kind of a little bit more of that. I don't know. It feels like it has a little bit more of that balance and I don't know, restraint maybe as a region, which is surprising because it's all planted on the northern side and gets hammered with sunlight. But it's probably because of that elevation, like we were talking about earlier, that allows the wines to kind of like reach this like really fun kind of like point. So.
And Inferno's got to be the coolest subzone name.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's they could have called it
like Sacella that's cool.
Sacella's cool. Falgella. I was like, well,
That's cool.
Sforzato. It's like that's kind of weird. Grumello. Yeah.
We ready to take some wine tests?
I don't know. Maybe not. Probably not.
Well, that's a great blind. That was really fun. I haven't had this bottle either.
Yeah.
I haven't had the Inferno. It's very, very good.
Yeah.
So this is their top of the line.
The one that you've purchased in the past, like Christina Scarpellini. Christina Scarpellini. That's the top wine that they make, which I think is Falgella Superiore Reserva that she does. Yeah. That's her top wine. But this is kind of the wine that I think, to me, stands out the most in the lineup, aside from the Cristina Scarpolini bottling, is the wine that I like to show the most from this winery, because it's just so kind of like, I don't know, just over delivers.
Yeah, the other one that you mentioned, that one, like the florality, the fruit is so much fresher and younger, and maybe that just has more aging potential. Where this one's,
Yeah, I mean, the bricking in this is already like out of control.
yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah,
It's incredible value. This is where people need to go, to the north side of the Adda River. Next time you're in Maggiore,
Yeah.
Lago di Maggiore, no, Lake Como, off
Lake
of Lake
Como.
Como.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could
Lake
go from
Como.
Milan. It's like an hour drive to
Yeah.
Valtellina.
Stay in Bellagio. Have them take you over the water, and then just go up there.
That'd be nice.
And when you're up there, you're not too far, because they're Valtellinas that can be made in Switzerland. They're that close to Switzerland, and it's allowed to be vinified up there.
Wow.
I think the grapes have to come from the valley, but they can be vinified up in Switzerland. And at that point, you're not. I have to look at the map, but I don't think you're in Valais. I think you're in the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland.
That's fascinating.
Which is fascinating history, because it's all of a sudden you go over that pass, and once you're in the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, you have these homes. It looks like Lombardy, but very different history. It's Swiss, and then you know the Swiss, especially in the Middle Ages, where they knew how to kick butt and take over places.
Yeah.
So Lombardy, obviously, there are a lot of these castles and fortresses built up there. It's really cool. Man, what a great place to visit and to drink wine as well. I had no idea this was going to be a PSA for Valtellina.
Well, it can be. Yeah.
This is
Why
incredible.
not?
This is incredible.
I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you mentioned like the cost comparison to Brolo and Barbaresco is like, Brolo and Barbaresco, I mean, is probably double the price of this, you know.
Some of those, especially the producers that everyone knows.
Yeah. The Vietti Cru Barolos that we sell, I'm just thinking of the wholesale price, so let me put it as, you know, they probably retail at $260 a bottle for Cru Barolos, you know, and this is a Cru Nebbiolo as well. It's just from a region that nobody knows about, you know.
So if I double your viewership, will we get a 2003 Barolo next time?
Yeah, why not?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll
Calling it right now.
pick one up on auction. Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah, double the viewership. So you need to just
I've
get.
seen your seller.
You need to get just 5 more people, and you'll double our viewership.
You've got people are watching.
Yeah.
This. People are listening. Beautiful wine. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Man, good stuff. Thank you.
Any closing comments? Any advice you'd like to tell anybody? Any words of wisdom or any last thoughts that you want to share?
No, I've got nothing. I've got nothing. I've said everything I've
No
had
way.
to say. No, wine's a lot of fun. If you're listening to a podcast about wine, you probably like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone's journey is fairly different. The core and WSET have been great to give like a foundation for learning, but the best sort of the best nuggets, the best way to learn has been like through going to wineries, through tasting and talking to people, and it's really incredible. Things like podcasts, you can learn so much. I mean, there are of course writers that you should. Wine writers that you should read, but it's pretty cool to see it grow, especially in North America.
Yeah. Happy to be here for it. Happy to be along.
This is fun.
Along for the ride.
I like the neon sign.
Thanks.
Did I tell you?
You did.
It's pretty cool.
All right. Well, cheers. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have you
for
on
having
soon.
me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Happy to be here.
And get some Valtellina for your cellar.
Why not? Why wouldn't you?
This is,
This thing could age forever.
These wines can age so
Or you could just drink it right now. All right. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thank you.